I was asked to make a few remarks about Jim on the occasion of his retirement. Jim came to BYU in 1986 from the University of Wisconsin, where he had a stellar career. After earning his PhD in 1969 at the University of Utah under Ed Burgess, Jim was a postdoc at Wisconsin, where he then continued as an associate professor in 1970, while at the same time being named a member of the Institute for Advanced Study and being awarded the Sloan Fellowship. After 7 years, he was promoted to full professor. Jim is well known as one of the best topologists in the world and has had many successes in his career. His most famous may be his solution of the double suspension problem in the late 70s. It's my opinion that his 1984 paper, The Combinatorial Structure of Co-Compact Discrete Hyperbolic Groups, stands alone as the seminal work in modern geometric group theory, presaging Gromov's popularization of hyperbolic groups and the advent of automatic groups in their field. A small list of other extremely important work by Jim includes the Cannon-Thurston map, the development of almost convex groups, the combinatorial Riemann mapping theorem, and his work on finite subdivision. Any one of these would absolutely make the career of any mathematician. The fact that they all came from one man, a good friend of mine, absolutely amazing. Jim is also well known as an extremely accomplished speaker. He's given literally hundreds of invited talks over his career. These include plenary talks at the large meetings of the AMN, the ICM, and the AMN. Jim is a fine teacher and a mentor of undergraduates, graduate students, and of topologists in general. He has supervised 18 PhDs between Wisconsin and BYU. He has been a mentor and a friend to several generations of young topologists, some now old like David Wright and me. So basically, Jim has had a fine career. As fine a career as anyone could ever dream of. That's great. But that's not what makes Jim so special. There are very many fine mathematicians that I've known, but I've never known a better colleague, friend, or human being than Jim studying Jim. As my family was traveling last week, I was talking to a friend about my trepidation towards giving this talk about someone I've respected and cared for so deeply. I wanted to give a talk that would truly honor Jim, but not be maudlin or embarrassing. After noting that it was going to be a somewhat short talk, my friend asked, "What's one quality that really sets Jim apart?" Both my wife and I immediately, and in unison, chorus, "Jim is humble." I want to make that the theme for the rest of this talk. Many of Christ's sayings, teachings, and parables are related to the concept of how humility is required of us so that we may progress in this life and after. It's really one of the basic tenets of all Christianity. Loving your neighbor as yourself, carefully pondered, is one of the best examples, if not the definition, of true humility. Among all my friends, family, and colleagues, Jim is the most authentically humble person I've known well. He doesn't make it a point to try to be humble. He doesn't mention it. He just is. That's Jim. One of my first memories of Jim is that when I first started working at BYU, we were walking to the Will to have lunch at the old cafeteria, which actually had good food. As we approached the front doors, we came to a spot which was littered with French fries that someone had dropped on the ground. Without missing a beat or commenting, Jim just started picking them up. Of course, I did so too. Like I said, I was brand new and wanted to make a good impression. As we walked to the garbage can, Jim remarked, "Hands washed." That's it. No mention of the person who spilled the fries. No remark about how if left to be trampled, the fries would leave grease stains on our fine church-funded university. Just hands wash. Hands wash. The point was, it didn't really matter whose fault the problem was, or whether it was a big problem or a little problem. Jim just saw something he could easily remedy, so he just fixed it without thinking. His humility is shown in his interaction with his friends in notable ways. Jim is truly kind and generous. Yes. However, Jim doesn't really worry about what you'll think of him if he says this or that to you. Not because he thinks he's better, but because he really doesn't think that even applies. Jim has no problem giving you his unvarnished, okay, slightly varnished opinion on things. He isn't mean, but he doesn't bloviate either. If he says he likes something you've done, you have a reason to celebrate. I don't think Jim has a political bone in his body. His humility transfers to his mathematics. Jim doesn't like pulling out big, fancy machinery to solve problems which can be solved in an elementary way. It always amazes me how he seemingly remembers the key issues in every proof he's ever learned. The standard research interaction with Jim is discussing an idea. Well, after a short bit of thought, he remarks, well, there is a well-known old theorem that will do what we want, but you really don't need all those hypotheses in this case, while he rattles off the outline of the proof from memory while remarking on the key issues for the current problem. To him, simple and clear beats hard and fancy. He is willing to spend valuable time on things that may not pay off. He and I have been successful in our joint work, partly due to the fact that he's willing to listen and spend time thinking about some of my crazy ideas. The good news is that on occasion these ideas do pan out, so his remarkable patience has been rewarded, at least a little bit. Jim is humble in his retirement. I think most people retire when they are tired of working hard and want a well-earned rest or at least a change of pace. Jim tells me that one of the reasons he's retiring is that he has several large mathematical writing projects that he fears he will never finish if he doesn't concentrate on them. So Jim is retiring so he can work harder to finish things that will benefit others. David Wright had some remarks when I talked to him about Jim's effect on the BYU math department. David comments, Jim Cannon has been a very steady and calming force in the BYU Department of Mathematics. Jim is very thoughtful. His opinions have been measured and carefully analyzed in the same way he does mathematics. When the mathematics department was struggling with internal and external problems about governance, Jim said, we can only solve our problems by following gospel principles. Not many of you know that Jim served on the committee on the profession of the American Mathematical Society. After returning from a meeting of the committee in 2004, Jim authored a note to the department about things he found interesting, not all from the actual meeting. He gave a detailed report of how the math department at the University of Rochester found a way to rebuild its image in the university after their administration decided to discontinue the mathematics graduate program. I think that knowingly or unknowingly, we have followed Jim's advice in our own department for the last 8 years, and it has paid off. In 1993, Jim Cannon delivered the 30th annual Carl G. Mazur Distinguished Faculty Lecture at Brigham Young University. The Mazur Distinguished Faculty Lecture is BYU's most prestigious faculty award and is announced each year during the annual university conference in August. Jim is a super conscientious teacher. He spends a great amount of time preparing lessons that are carefully delivered. He is very patient with the students in his office. His emphasis is helping students understand and succeed. His mathematical talks are prepared with the same great amount of care. Unfortunately, many mathematicians talk until the time runs out and they stop. Jim's talk have a beginning, middle, and an end. There's always a good conclusion to his talks. And those are the ends of David's comments. In sum, Jim has been a world-class mathematician, a great colleague, and a true friend. His presence has truly blessed BYU, and all of us especially. We wish him a happy retirement. I would, however, like to make one more remark. Often, after we had solved some small research problem, and I was reveling in it, Jim would remark, isn't it great that we have wives to support us so that we have the peace of mind and the time to do mathematics? Jim was absolutely right, of course. Please join me in thanking Ardith for her years of support of Jim and BYU. We wish her Oh, and there is one more thing.
Just especially for Jim, let Jim know how very special he is and how his tenure here at UA has been for all of us. So we've done something extraordinary that a bunch of us have participated in. I'm supposed to make it clear that this is a one-time thing. We're not going to do this for everybody who retires. Just Jim. But we got something from his relative, another Pratt, his Helaman Pratt Ferguson, which Helaman was almost reluctant to let go of. This is one of his nicest sculptures. It has some topological aspects, and I'll let Helaman explain that in the future. But this is kind of a one-of-a-kind thing. The original stone version of it is somewhere in Texas. There's only one bronze version of it, and that's when the mold was broken, so this is it. It's one of a kind, and it goes to Jim with our from all of us, really. It's from everybody. So
Come on, let me get
Gotta get the photo here, Jim, so you can stand in the middle there. Here's your wife. Greg, Rod.
Okay.
No, nice.
thank you.
The rest of the evening is yours. I'm told that we shouldn't hang around here and party after midnight. So.
Wait, it's still me. I still have mine. My stuff.